Welcome to Gavel. I'm your host, Cobb District Attorney Vic Reynolds, and we're very excited to be back in the studio with our partners at TV23 for the 12th installment of Gavel. This is a show about the criminal justice system in Cobb County, and our mission here is try to help citizens understand a system that remains a mystery to most folks. As you may recall, in prior episodes of Gavel, we've taken a look at how different court systems work: probate court, juvenile court. We've taken a look at how a clerk's office works, and we've taken a look at what happens to you if you happen to be a victim of a crime in Cobb County. In the future, we're going to be taking a look at some different items and subjects that may affect individuals in the normal course of their life. What happens if you're on jury duty? What happens if you or a loved one happens to be on probation? But today, we're going to take a look at a very interesting subject that's certainly very important to me as a district attorney of this county, and I think is very important to the citizens of this county, and that's the issue of gang activity, not only in the state of Georgia and in our country, but in our county as well. And to help us do that today, I'm very honored and pleasure to have two individuals that I have the honor of working with day in and day out in the Cobb DA's office. Jared Usher, who is a prosecutor who prosecutes gang crimes in Cobb, and Charlie Lida, who is a gang investigator with the Cobb DA's office. Jared and Charlie, welcome to Gavel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Jared, let's start from the beginning. Some people may think that gangs aren't an issue in the United States. So let's talk a little bit about what the numbers are as far as gang members in our country, work it down to the state, and then let's end up talking a little bit about gang issues in our own county in Cobb.
All right. There are statistics out there that address these issues. In 2011, the FBI did a survey for gang assessment and threat levels and came to the determination that there were about 1.4 million gang members in our country. That was an increase by about 400,000 from just 2 years prior. So they were able to show that these gang associations and members were definitely on the rise. Here in Georgia, the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, has come up with their own statistics and has determined that around 22,000 gang members reside here in our state, in the state of Georgia. Locally here in Cobb County, Cobb Police are able to determine that we have around 122 active gangs doing crimes, participating in gang activity here in our county. Around anywhere high numbers, 90% of our crimes can be related to either gang-motivated issues, gang-related issues. And that's significant when you're looking at the breakdown of the crimes and how they're related to gangs. Because of that, you can see from the legislative intent for our statute that covers gangs, the Georgia Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. When you look at the legislative intent, you see that the legislators actually stated that Georgia, and this is in 2010, stated that Georgia is in a state of crisis, and that crisis is created by these violent criminal street gangs that are terrorizing our peaceful citizens. If you read further into that legislative intent, you find out the purpose of our Criminal Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act is to eradicate the gang issue. And here in Cobb County, under your direction and leadership, that is our goal, is to eradicate our gang issue.
You know, Charlie, that seems almost unbelievable that in our county, Cobb, as Jared pointed out a moment ago, there could be over 120 gangs actually operating here. Most of the citizens, thankfully, haven't been exposed to that type of activity and don't see it. We do, day in and day out in our office.
Yes, sir.
Tell the viewers a little bit, if you would, when Jared says there's that many gangs in Cobb, what type of gangs are we talking about? What's the name of these gangs and things of that nature?
We have a lot of different gangs, and it's very diverse. And I tend to look at the gang problem Metro Atlanta wide, because these guys aren't bound by jurisdictions. They're not bound by county lines, and they go anywhere that they can, prey on innocent victims and take crimes of opportunity. And they're very impulsive with these crimes. So some of the gangs that we have in Cobb, we have Hardhead Money Click, which is homegrown. We've got Babyland, which is a homegrown gang. And then we've also got different sets that belong to these national entities like the Bloods, Crips, the Gangster Disciples. And as a Metro Atlanta trend, we're seeing a lot of these local gangs being absorbed and coming into the national gangs. And the reason is they want this type of notoriety. And as a local gang, they may be known in a community and they may spread fear within that community. But once they become involved with the national gangs or even transnational gangs, they can spread that notoriety anywhere. And that's what they ultimately want, is that infamy.
Yeah, that's you know, to most folks and most citizens who hear that, I know they would think that is unbelievable that could be happening in our county.
Yes.
And again, you know, we see it day in and day out. And I know you two, particularly on the front of that battle. So, Jared, let's talk with the viewers a little bit about, you know, one of the things I've always said about a community is people move in for two reasons. One, they want to be safe, and number two, they want their kids to go to good schools. And so we're blessed. We have a great school system in Cobb, but obviously, if we have those number of gangs, we probably have issues potentially affecting our schools. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct. At this point, we are able to determine that every school here in Cobb County has some type of gang element inside its confounds. Unfortunately, and I think Charlie can state this from personal experience, gangs use schools as a fertile ground to recruit and bring in new gang members. What we've seen in the trends is that anywhere from 9 to 10-year-olds, as young as 9 to 10-year-olds, are being indoctrinated into these gangs, especially when they have family members who are already part of those gangs. It can be also anywhere from 12 to 13-year-olds when their families aren't connected to those gangs. So here in Cobb County, every school has some form of gang activity going on within its walls, unfortunately. Luckily, here in Cobb County, too, we also have a wonderful law enforcement community, which is a great tool for us, and we have resources on that level at each school. We have officers who are able to investigate, identify, document, which is a huge thing for us when we're prosecuting these gang cases, everything that's happening within those schools to help us when these individuals become older, prosecute them as adults.
Let me follow up on that just a little bit. I know when we say these schools have indications or evidence of gang activity in them, are we talking about just anecdotally what we've seen, or when do we have circumstances where gang members tell us we have folks in each school and things of that nature? Have we seen that in our office
Definitely.
as well?
We are getting information from gang members themselves that we have this issue going on in our schools. You can also see it when you're driving around and you see tagging. That is evident of the gang activity around that area. You're seeing it around schools more. The local resource officers that I described to you talk about various issues that are going on in the schools. Fights between rival gangs happen at schools very often. So it's a fertile recruitment ground, and it's also a place where these individuals, when you think about it, our kids spend a majority of their day at school.
Certainly.
So it is a long period of time for them to get to know other gang members and to become ingrained in that gang culture.
Charlie, let's delve into that a little bit further. You know, parents who have kids at school who may be concerned about, you know, I don't want my child to become involved in this type of activity. Based on your experience in law enforcement for all the years you have in the various counties you've worked in across this state, are there some things that parents need to look for, some warning signs that may indicate or trigger to them my child may be getting involved in a gang?
Absolutely. There is a period of time where a parent or a guardian, whoever, has a chance to influence this kid. I say a lot of times that the indications are much like would be if a child was on drugs. You're going to start seeing behavioral changes. You're going to start seeing the kid get in trouble in school. You're going to start seeing him change his friends, changing his clothing. He may start staying out, you know, later than he's supposed to. He's going to display antisocial behavior. And those are the things that, like I said, with drug stuff, it also comes with the gang stuff. Now, there's a couple different things that are specific to gangs that you really need to look for. These gangs induct these young guys into the gangs through a physical beating. They beat them into the organization at a formal meeting or informal meeting, whichever one they decide, and they do it for a specific length of time. And these beatings can be very severe depending on the individual. So if your child comes home and he looks like he's been beat up and he's being evasive when you start asking him questions, you might have a problem. And the reason I say that you have a short period of time to get these guys, because once they're introduced into the gang, they have already gone through physical and psychological changes to be part of this organization. And oftentimes they've already been involved with committing crimes. And so this is why you have to act on this, because once these psychological changes, it's really hard to get them out, because they believe in this organization, they believe in the rules, they believe in the rituals, and they are trained to live and die for this organization.
You know, Jared mentioned a moment ago that these schools are fertile grounds for recruiting, and we want parents to make sure they watch out for certain things. Follow up a little bit on that is based on your experience, not only in Cobb, but I know you've worked gangs in DeKalb. And
Yes, sir.
You're one of the top gang investigators in this state. Are schools a place, recreation centers where kids hang out? Are those the areas where these gang bangers and folks will be going to recruit young folks to get in that gang?
Absolutely. And one of the other reasons that they like these young guys is because they know the juvenile system is about reform.
Rehabilitation as
Yeah.
well.
So what happens, they get these young guys because they know it's going to be a revolving door if they're not involved in one of the more serious crimes. So they use these young guys for a lot of the crimes and do their bidding, where these older guys will tell these young guys what to do. When I was a gang investigator in DeKalb County, I worked on a lot of cases and a lot of different violent crimes. But also, to be a gang investigator, you have to have some time in the street. So I would maximize the time I had in the street by going to these schools I knew had problems. And these older guys would actually, at the time the schools were letting out, would go to these schools to pick up these young girls and pick up their gang members and carry guns and weapons and drugs to the schools and things like that. So they're definitely an attraction, and it's you've got to be real cautious with that, because in other places drive-bys are not uncommon.
Well, it's interesting and it's scary too how schools are recruiting grounds for these gang members, and I know they do all types of crime too. So what I'd like to do, if you'll hold that thought a minute, we'll come back right after this break, and I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, the type of crimes that we see gangs involved in, particularly in our county, and then Jarrett, we'll talk a little bit about specific laws and how they address gang issues and some things that we can do as law enforcement and prosecutors to make sure we enforce that. Thank you very much for watching us. Again, stay tuned with us. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back to talk a little bit more about gang activity. Thank you.
Bring this one.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Gavel. I'm your host, Cobb District Attorney Vic Reynolds. Again, I'm very honored today to have as our guests Jared Usher and Charlie Leiter from the DA's office. We're talking a little bit about gang activity in Cobb. Charlie, one thing I thought about during the course of the break I'd like to touch on with you before we get into the type of criminal activity we're seeing from gangs. You know, we hear about gangs, and probably the majority of us think about young males or male members. Now, do we see that as not running across both genders? In other words, are females also becoming involved in gang activities?
Absolutely, and they're involved with all the normal transactions that the guys would do between drugs and violence and carrying weapons and things like that. In the past, when I first started, a lot of the females were what they call sexed into the gang, which means they were initiated through a sexual initiation where they had to have sex with a certain number of guys from the group. These girls were generally thought of as prostitutes. They never attained any kind of rank or respect from the organization. Well, now the trend is these girls are choosing to do the beat-in process. They're going through the same process as the boys. They get physically assaulted for a specific length of time at a meeting, and they attain the respect by doing this from the male members of the gang.
Yeah, I know this type of information is just hard to fathom by most
Yes.
folks. And gangs that we see in Cobb, let's be specific about Cobb, since most of our viewers will be from this area. We think about criminal activity committed by gangs. Are we talking about larceny or theft or damage to property, or do we see it running the gamut all the way to violent crime as well?
Gang crimes are generally pretty specific. They're generally street crimes. They want like I said before, they want the notoriety. They want to be known, so they do stuff that's impulsive and violent. And the more violent crimes they do, the more respect they're going to have from their rivals and within their own organization. So you see a lot of crimes involving shootings, assaults, stabbings, You see stuff like burglaries, stealing cars, carjackings are really popular. And you see most of these crimes involve, physical actions with a lot less of a motivation for money. So these guys are really more oriented to violent crimes that are going to boost their status and less involved with money, even though money is a secondary source or priority.
Yes, one of the interesting things, we hear about years ago, the mafia and the mob up in the New England area. It seems, as a general rule, they did everything they could to do to make sure no one knew they were in it. And it seems as if gangs are just the opposite. Members want the citizenry and the public to know they're in it.
That's exactly right. That's why you'll see graffiti placed up, or they'll put their stuff on social websites or YouTube. There's videos that are there from every gang you can imagine. They want that notoriety. They want to be known for who they are. It is their total identity. And that's why it is so dangerous for these young kids to become involved with this, because it really does consume them because of their total identity. And it's very hard for them to get out. And they live by an honor code, which a lot of times they'll call blood in, blood out.
Yeah, it is a dangerous situation. Well, Jared, I guess we've probably managed to scare a lot of our viewers today talking about things and seriously that go on in our county. Let's talk a little bit about what we do, what we can do as a prosecutor's office, and what we see law enforcement doing to stop this in our county. Because, as you said a moment ago, our goal is pretty clear. We want to make sure there's no gangs in Cobb, and if there are, then we want to prosecute them. Are there specific laws designed for prosecutors and law enforcement to use that are directed at gangs particularly?
Yes, there is OCGA 1615-1 through 4. Those are the Georgia Terrorism Street Gang Prevention Act, and that law is specifically designed to prosecute these criminal street gangs. As a prosecutor, there are several things that we have to prove to get to that point, and law enforcement is wholly on board with gathering the evidence that we need to do that. But the statute itself is directed at the criminal street gangs. So the goal is to prosecute not just individuals, because as Charlie's explained very well, this is a culture. These are boys, girls, men, women who are proud to be part of this gang. And our goal is to prosecute the gang, not just individuals committing individual crimes, but to prosecute the gang as a whole. And this code section is a very powerful tool for a prosecutor. It allows us to be more target specific and to take out the gang itself as opposed to just individuals.
Well, let's say that law enforcement makes an arrest of an individual, and let's say hypothetically that person has committed what we call an aggravated assault. Let's say that he's assaulted a person and hurt an individual. And obviously law enforcement would arrest that person and we would prosecute that person for that offense of aggravated assault. If that person has done that and he or she's a member of a gang, and we believe they're doing it to further their gang or further their reputation in the gang, is that where that charge would come into effect and say, not only will you be charged with the assault, we're going to charge you with a gang crime as well?
That's correct. So the statute that we have to utilize with these gangs has really 4 elements that we have to prove. First, we have to show that the individual being prosecuted is associated or a member of a criminal street gang. And we do that through showing that the criminal street gang is 3 or more people and they're associated in fact. Elements to show that they're associated in fact would include a lot of what Charlie's testified to about colors, signs that they throw, tagging or graffiti, any of those sorts of things to show that they are in fact a criminal street gang. Once we show that the individual is associated with a criminal street gang, and we do have in fact a criminal street gang, then we have to show, of course, as we do in every crime, that the individual committed a crime. And then the final prong to that is going to be to show that this crime that was committed, in your example, aggravated assault, was in furtherance or had a nexus to the criminal street gang. And we do that through a variety of ways. A lot of that's going to come from the law enforcement community and the evidence that they have regarding that criminal street gang itself. Is that what this criminal street gang is generally involved in? This individual that we're prosecuting, does he have a history of gang involvement that involves these type of crimes? All of those sorts of things go to show that nexus.
Let's give the viewers a specific example.
Okay.
Recently, you had an occasion to be involved in the prosecution along with another one of our gang prosecutors from Cobb DA's office against an individual who belonged to, I believe, a gang called Suriano.
Sir 13.
Sir 13's, okay. Tell the viewers a little bit about about that particular case and how it came about that that person was not only guilty of crimes he committed, but guilty of being in the gang activity as well.
Okay. So this individual, we were able to determine, was a member and an associate of a criminal street gang known as Sir 13. The criminal street gang itself had a subset known as Hard Times, which was located locally here in Cobb County in the Austell-Mableton area. The case originally came into the office as aggravated assaults. There was no type of gang charge associated with it. When it came into the DA's office, Charlie Lida actually walked by and saw the file and saw a photograph of this individual. I believe it was a bookend photo.
Yes.
And from that, Charlie remembered this individual from dealing with him in DeKalb County on other gang issues.
I think that proves what Charlie said a moment ago, that this goes across county lines.
Absolutely.
It does.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So what we were able to do was to look at this individual, look at the crimes that were committed, and just briefly I can tell you a short synopsis of the facts. This happened in 2013. This individual was driving around Cobb County in a vehicle that was owned by his mother. It was a white Ford Explorer, and he had discharged a firearm at 2 different vehicles in various areas of Austell and Mableton. These vehicles that were shot at were occupied by individuals that had no clue who was shooting at them.
So we're not talking about another gang member in a vehicle or anybody, no rivals or anything of that nature?
Correct. These were random citizens of Cobb County. Unfortunately, they were operating a red vehicle. And in this gang, Sir 13, the rival color is red.
Right.
So this was an antagonistic act by the defendant toward his rival color, disrespecting his rival color, even though he didn't know the occupants of these vehicles. His job as a Sir 13 gang member is to disrespect his rival gang.
So in other words, a person shooting at a vehicle because of the color of the vehicle.
Correct.
Because that color belongs to a rival gang.
Correct.
All right, go ahead.
So he shot at these 2 vehicles based upon the fact that they were red in color. We were able to take these 2 aggravated assaults, which shooting at a vehicle is an aggravated assault, and from that, by adding the gang charges, we came out with 26 total counts. We had counts against him for participating in the gang via those crimes of aggravated assault. We had counts for encouraging other people. We were able to determine that he did, in fact, have at least 2 other occupants in the car with him while he was discharging at least one of the cars. He would never give up the name of his co-conspirators because, again, that goes toward the gang culture aspect of not snitching on your gang members. So we were able to charge him with maintaining and increasing his status in the gang, participating in the gang, encouraging others in the gang. Based upon these offenses, we came from 2 incidents, we came out with 26 counts. A jury convicted him on all but 1 count, and he received a sentence of 100 to 50 years.
50 years in the state prison system.
That's correct.
These gang charges on top of what the defendant has done that got he or she arrested, does that increase or enhance punishment for a person because they're doing that in a gang?
Yes, it can. The statute itself on the Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act has a subsection that is a non-merger clause. So each of these counts that we indicted him for the Gang Act, one being participation, one being maintain and increase status, those would not merge with each other. So it does give us, as a prosecutor, more punishment on the back end for a judge to use if they so choose.
I know we're also working with our friends in the legislature, particularly the members of the Cobb delegation, to tweak and enhance that particular bill even more to allow us as prosecutors a little bit more liberty to use certain previous gang history, particularly if it was a juvenile history and things of that nature. And I know we're very much in support of that, and we thank our friends and partners in the delegation who are working with us in that regard. Charlie, let's try to end this thing on a little bit of a positive note. I know, as I told Jared a moment ago, we probably scared some of our viewers today, but we're blessed in this county. We have a very close working relationship with law enforcement, a close working relationship with the executive members through the commission and the delegation. And so, let's last minute or so, let's end up on a positive note. What can communities do to help fight this issue of gangs?
Communities can have trust within the law enforcement, and they can provide information because obviously the police can't be on the streets within a particular neighborhood for 24/7. These guys have a busy job and they're running around all over the place. So we've got to have community support. We've got to have support from the leadership of this county, which I have seen, and especially coming from other places. There's a strong leadership here that is diligent in combating crimes and gangs. And with that unified front, these guys aren't going to flourish here.
Well, we are very thankful for those partners. I know as the district attorney, we have a good relationship with our law enforcement
Absolutely.
friends and our folks in the county commission, our delegation, and we appreciate that. And I want to take a moment as we wrap up to thank both of you for being here with us today. As I said at the beginning of this show, I have the honor and pleasure of working with you day in and day out, and I see the dedication you have to the citizens of Cobb in fighting this issue of gang activity here, and I appreciate it on behalf of the citizens. Thank you very much, not only for what you do, but thank you for joining us here today on Gavel to Gavel. And let me thank the viewers for watching today. We appreciate so much you tuning in to this episode of Gavel to Gavel. I'm your host, Cobb District Attorney Vic Reynolds. Stay tuned for future episodes as we learn more and more about the criminal justice system in Cobb County. And remember to stay safe. Thank you.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls.
But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on a sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him opening his own clothing store at the age of 18? 1 in 138,000. Excited to be a part of pop culture, he packed for the big city. The odds of finding someone to invest in his vision? 1 in 4.5 million. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
It's no fairy tale that the right fit means everything, especially when it comes to car seats. Always choose one that's the right fit for your child's age and size.
That does make a difference.
To find out more, visit safercar.gov/the right seat.